Hi guys, it's Tyler. I'm back with my first movie review. And if you saw my last video, you know that I came back to YouTube after a long hiatus. Life got crazy. And I am going to start doing videos again. And I wanted to start doing movie reviews. If you didn't see my other video, here it is. I am going to do one review per week. And I thought for the first several weeks, it would be really fun to take some of the animated Disney movies and compare them to the live action remakes of these movies. Since I am a 90s kid, I grew up on Disney as a child. It was a huge part of my childhood. I'm a huge Disney fan. And, gonna put it out there, since I'm a 90s kid, I do sort of have kind of a bias towards the animated, but I'm gonna be totally open-minded and objective when I do these reviews. And so this week, on Wednesday, I watched the animated Jungle Book and the live action one back to back, just so I can, make comparisons, take notes, and what I wanted to say in this video when I compared them. So I'm going to compare them to each other. Let's talk about the similarities, the differences, what I thought about the similarities, what I thought about the differences, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to give a general opinion on which movie I think was better or which one I preferred. Now, as you can see from the title of this video and from my background here, I'm comparing the animated Jungle Book to the live action remake of the Jungle Book. And just in case you have not seen either one of these movies or neither one, first of all, I recommend you go watch them. Second of all, spoiler alert. There are spoilers in here because I'm going to be getting into the details of these movies. So if you don't want to see spoilers, then go watch the movies, then come back and watch this video. But so without further ado, let's get into what I thought about the movies compared. So both of these movies have the same storyline of Mowgli living in the jungle among the wolves. And the jungle becomes not safe for him anymore because Shere Khan, the tiger, threatens his life. And now Mowgli has to leave the jungle. And of course, in both movies, Mowgli does not want to leave the jungle. So that it creates a conflict. So that's one of the big similarities. They came the same type of storyline, but there is some differences here. And I'm gonna try to only talk about the big differences. I'm not really gonna harp on small details because there's a lot to unpack in both these movies. I don't want to, make this a monotonous thing. So I'm gonna try my best to only talk about big differences. So if I miss small details, that's why. Okay, so one of the big differences in the animated and the live action, there's a new, in the live action, there's this element called Peace Rock, where the jungle goes through a big drought and Peace Rock is shown. And Peace Rock signifies a water truce in which the animals of the jungle could go to the watering hole and be able to drink water without being hunted by predators, without being attacked. And there's a really great scene in the live action where we see all the animals at the watering hole drinking and being peaceful with each other, which I really liked this scene. Because in the animated, you really didn't get to see a whole bunch of animals from the jungle in one scene together. And this one, you get to see a lot more animals. And, here are the animals of the jungle. They're together. They're coexisting with each other. They're having this truce. I thought it was a really nice change. I really thought it was a nice adding. And so Mowgli is at the watering hole, in the live action version. He tries to get water his own way. And Akela, who is the head of the wolf pack, tells Mowgli that he is not to use his tricks, his human tricks, because man is not exactly allowed in the jungle according to the law of the jungle. So this is actually a running theme in the movie. The characters telling Mowgli, mainly Bagheera and the wolves, telling Mowgli to not use his tricks. Because again, he's in the jungle and there's no place for them. Which this probably contributes to the personality, the identity conflict with Mowgli. Like, should I be a human? Should I be a wolf? Because they're telling me not to use my human tricks, and I want to stay in the jungle. So it creates a weird thing for Mowgli. Um, but I digress. While this is going on, Shere Khan shows up at the watering hole and threatens Mowgli's life. He reiterates that the law of the jungle is man is not allowed. Before I get more into that actually brings me to one of the differences in the animated and the live action. In the animated Jungle Book, the wolves are seen in the beginning, and then they're never shown after Mowgli leaves the pack. In the live action, the wolves are in the whole thing throughout the movie. And as for Shere Khan in the animated, he's mentioned a couple times in the movie, but he's never actually shown until towards the end. Whereas in the live action, like the wolves, he is shown throughout the movie, which is more, it's more accurate to the book that Rudyard Kipling wrote. If I pronounce his name wrong, I'm sorry. But that's more accurate to how he wrote the book, that the wolves of Shere Khan were actually in the whole thing. I read a few passages from the book, and they were in there. So I did like the difference. I did like how they were trying to be more true to how the book was written. So that's why they included the wolves and Shere Khan in the whole thing. So I actually like that difference. But anyways, and this whole scene, I'm gonna talk about because this actually brings up another difference in the two movies, a big difference. So in the animated Jungle Book, when Mowgli is told by Bagheera to leave the jungle, he is unaware of Shere Khan's threat. In fact, he's not even aware that the wolf pack even met, with each other to talk, to discuss. He just kind of goes off with Bagheera, and then Bagheera tells him he has to leave the jungle because Shere Khan is threatening his life. But in the live action, Shere Khan threatens Mowgli while at the waterhole, which Mowgli is at the waterhole. So Mowgli actually is aware of Shere Khan's threat, and he is aware of the subsequent Wolf Council meeting that took place after, because Shere Khan did say that once the rains come back and the waters rise again, that the truce will no longer be there and he will hunt Mowgli, and he does not care who he has to kill in order to do so. Mowgli recognizes this and goes to the Wolf Council and says that he will leave the pack because he does not want his family getting hurt. That shows a lot of character strength, in my opinion, for a little boy to look at a family that has raised him and he has lived with is practically his entire life. Now he has to look at them and say, I'm going to leave because I don't want you guys to get hurt on account of me. That's really a bold thing and a really strong thing to do. I don't know that anyone would really have the strength to have to leave their family just because a tiger is hunting them. That's a big thing. So I liked that difference because it showed a lot of character strength in Mowgli. And another thing I liked in the live action version of the Wolf Council, there's a really great heartwarming moment between Raksha, his wolf mother, and him. There's this very, very sweet emotional goodbye between them where Raksha tearfully agrees to let Mowgli leave. And they really do a great job at showing the mother-son connection that they truly have with each other. So I thought that was a really sweet part of the movie. So then Mowgli goes off with Bagheera to lead the pack. And this brings me to a difference in Mowgli's character specifically in these movies that I actually enjoy. In the animated, Mowgli protests that he wants to leave the jungle over and over again. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I want to stay. Why do I have to leave? And that's kind of what he says in the movie. In the live action version, though, and I'm sure it was implied in the animated why he didn't want to leave, but in the live action, Mowgli actually expresses why he doesn't want to leave. He, although he knows that he comes from humans, he says, "Hey, I don't know, man. I don't know them. I don't know their ways. I only know the way of the jungle and the wolves. That's all I know. And so I don't want to leave. This is my home, and I don't know man." So he gives more substance as to why he doesn't want to leave. And of course, Bagheera, still says, "Well, hey, we still have to leave, you know." And also, while we're on the subject of Bagheera, I do want to mention that although Bagheera's character is very similar in both movies, I will say there's a slight difference in his character in the live action, that his character seems a little bit more level-headed and patient with Mowgli, and a little bit more wise. Whereas in the animated one, he was kind of more quick to anger and quick to erupt, as seen in this next thing I'm about to talk about, which is the difference in how Mowgli and Bagheera get separated from each other. So in the animated version, they get separated because they have a fight with each other about, again, Mowgli wanting to stay in the jungle, and I think Mowgli knocked Bagheera into the water by some means, and Bagheera gets really upset and screams at Mowgli, "Well, just go on your way," and get frustrated, and that's it. They get separated. In the live action, they get separated as they're walking through the plains, and Shere Khan jumps out and tries to kill Mowgli. And Bagheera tells Mowgli to run, while Bagheera tries to fight off Shere Khan so that Mowgli can escape. And I liked this difference because it makes more sense that that's why they would get separated, because Shere Khan would jump out and attack Mowgli, and Bagheera would try to fight Shere Khan off to protect Mowgli. Whereas in the animated one, they get separated because Mowgli has a tantrum and Bagheera has a tantrum, and they just go off because they're mad at each other. In this one, they're never really mad at each other. It just Shere Khan jumps out and attacks, and Mowgli has to run for his life. And Mowgli successfully escapes by jumping into the gorge and running off from the buffalo. And subsequently, Shere Khan goes to the wolf pack and confronts the wolves. Again, this is not in the animated version. This is the live action. I like this scene because it shows more of Shere Khan's character, his ruthlessness. He goes to the wolf pack, confronts Akela about not turning Mowgli over to him. And although Akela mentions that Mowgli left the pack and therefore they have no conflict with Shere Khan still decides to throw a power move and kill Akela and tell the other wolves that he now rules their land until they turn over Mowgli. And he does this in order to draw Mowgli out. He knows that if Mowgli hears about Akela's death, then Mowgli will most likely return to the wolf pack and try to avenge Akela. So that's very clever on Shere Khan's part. And again, it shows more of his evilness. It shows more of his character. So I really liked that added scene there. And then we jump back to Mowgli, who, after a landslide, jumps into the water and floats into a different part of the jungle, where he encounters the snake Kaa. And while we're on the subject, Kaa, there's quite a few differences between Kaa and the animated and the live action. Before I go for the most obvious one, the first difference is in the animated, Kaa has two scenes. One where Bagheera and Mowgli are in the tree sleeping, and he pops out, tries to eat Mowgli, and Bagheera fights him off. And then he has another scene where Mowgli runs away from Baloo, which we'll cover that a little bit more in detail later. And again, tries to eat Mowgli, but is interrupted by Shere Khan. In this one, Kaa only has one scene in the movie. And for the more obvious difference, in this live action adaptation, Kaa is voiced by Scarlett Johansson, who is a female, whereas in the animated, Kaa is voiced by Sterling Holloway, who is a male. So there is a gender difference. A lot of people question this difference, but I actually like this difference. I personally think a female's voice tends to be more seductive when you're trying to lull someone to a false sense of security. So I actually did enjoy this difference. And while Ka is hypnotizing Mowgli to put him into a false sense of security, there's a flashback to how Mowgli got into the jungle. It shows him in a cave with his biological father, with Shere Khan trying to kill them. And Mowgli's dad is protecting him. Shere Khan unfortunately ends up killing Mowgli's dad, but then runs away after being burned by the torch. So Mowgli is left there alone. And that's also how he meets Bagheera in the jungle. So I really liked how they gave a backstory, not only to how Mowgli got in the jungle and met Bagheera, but also it also gives a backstory as to why Shere Khan hates man. It gives an example why he does not like them, because of what Mowgli's dad did, then he burned him. So after the flashback, we go back to Ka and Mowgli, and Ka is about to eat Mowgli when suddenly a bear fights off Ka and saves Mowgli's life. And when Mowgli wakes up in the next scene, we find out that bear is none other than Baloo. And here we go with the subject of Baloo. And there's a lot of differences in Baloo's character in the animated and the live action adaptation. Up until now, I've said that I've liked the differences that the live action made to the characters in this movie. However, in this case, I actually prefer the animated version of Baloo. Because in this live action, Baloo comes off as very selfish and has ulterior motives. You know, he immediately tells Mowgli after Mowgli wakes up that Mowgli needs to pay him back for him saving his life. And that involves getting him honey down off of a cliff from bees that sting Mowgli. So he starts out by using Mowgli to get the honey, which upsets Mowgli very much. And Mowgli is not a big fan of Baloo. Not that I blame him. In the animated, Baloo meets up with Mowgli after he runs off from Bagheera, and they actually have a great relationship all from the start. And Baloo is very kind-hearted, and so I will say in the live action, Baloo does go through some character development, which I appreciated later in the movie. I'm just saying, as a whole, I prefer how they did Baloo in the animated version. But this also brings me to the first actual song they do, which is the Bare Necessities. Now there is, and I'm going to get to how I feel about the music in general in both movies at the end of this video, but I will say I like how they did the montage of Mowgli and Bagheera slowly getting closer as they develop a relationship, and they sing the Bare Necessities for a little bit, and then Bagheera pops back up in the picture, and Mowgli proceeds to tell Bagheera that him and Baloo have teamed up, to which Bagheera is not very pleased, as in the animated one, he's not very pleased. Sorry. And then Mowgli in the live action shows Bagheera what he's done with his tricks that he's not supposed to use. And this is one of the few moments in the live action where Bagheera loses his cool with Mowgli for a little bit for using his tricks. And says he has to leave the jungle. Mowgli, of course, again argues with him, and then Bagheera loses his cool for a little bit again. But Baloo manages to diffuse the situation by saying, let's just sleep it off and we'll talk about it in the morning. And Bagheera reluctantly agrees, but still says Mowgli has to leave for the jungle in the morning. And then there's another added scene after this, in which the elephants, the adult elephants, are looking into a deep hole which one of their baby elephants has fallen in. And Mowgli goes and rescues the baby elephant. And Bagheera and Baloo watch from a distance as he does this. I really like this scene because, again, it shows Mowgli's character, how much he loves the jungle and how much he loves the animals in the jungle. He would do anything to protect and save them. So it really shows a great character arc in Mowgli. And Bagheera even seems impressed as he's watching this. Now, he still says that Mowgli needs to leave because of Shere Khan, which brings me to one of the differences that I did not like in the live action. I was not a fan of this change. So Bagheera and Baloo have a talk on why Mowgli has to leave the jungle. And Baloo ultimately has to be the one to tell Mowgli that he needs to leave. Now, in the animated version, Baloo does this by going up to Mowgli, going on a walk with him, and then saying, Mowgli, I need to take you back to the village. And Mowgli freaks out and he runs away. In this one, Baloo goes up to Mowgli and basically tells Mowgli that he never considered Mowgli his friend. He was using Mowgli the whole time. He doesn't want him around anymore. And he screams at him to leave the jungle and breaks Mowgli's heart. And Mowgli runs away brokenhearted. I did not like this change. I feel like Baloo should have done it more tactfully as he did it in the animated version. Because in the animated version, at least he was tactful about it. And he tried to reason with Mowgli. And this one, he was just a jerk and hurt Mowgli's feelings. And Mowgli again feels betrayed. Again. So I didn't like that difference. That's one of the differences I really didn't like. Well, subsequent to that, Mowgli gets, in the live action, gets kidnapped by the monkeys and taken to King Louie. Now, in the animated, the kidnapping and taking to Louie's temple happens before Baloo tells Mowgli has to go to the man. So this is actually a different order of events. And so we cut to Louie's temple. This is another one. While on the subject of King Louie, this is another character that I really didn't like the differences that they did with this character in the live action. I much preferred King Louie's character in the animated because King Louie's character in the animated is much more charismatic and much more comical. And in this one, he's just kind of a jerk. And that's it. And he's just kind of scary. He's a gigantopithecus in this one. Whereas the anime, he's just kind of an orangutan. So, and also, I want to be like you. I didn't like what they did with this one in live action. It wasn't great. The rhythm was not great in this one. But again, I'll get into the music a little at the end of the video. So basically the same plot line happens as the animated one. King Louie tries to get Mowgli to give him Man's Red Fire in exchange for letting him stay in the jungle with him. Well, Mowgli, as in the animated one, Mowgli kind of says, I don't know how to make fire. And then in this one, Mowgli more refuses to do it. And King Louie gets upset. And then Baloo and Bagheera come to his rescue. Now, in the animated one, Baloo does this by putting on a disguise as a female monkey and, tries to dance and distract them while Bagheera gets Mowgli. And in this one, he does it by going in and singing King Louie's praises while Bagheera tries to sneak Mowgli out. But they are caught by King Louie, and this is where possibly the most crucial moment in the movie happens. One of them. When Mowgli's running away in the live action, Mowgli says that he wants to go back to Akela on the Wolves. And King Louie tells him that Shere Khan killed Akela on account of him. And this angers Mowgli. He confronts Baloo and Bagheera and asks them, is it true? And then gets mad because they didn't tell him and they didn't do anything about it. So Mowgli then runs to the man village, gets a torch, and runs back in the jungle to go and confront Shere Khan, as Shere Khan knew he would. So Shere Khan's plan worked because he knew that Mowgli would do this. And this brings us to the final confrontation between Mowgli and Shere Khan. Now, in the animated version, the final confrontation occurs after Mowgli meets a group of buzzards, which I do love the buzzards, and I love their song, and they were very comical, and I'm kind of disappointed they weren't in the live action adaptation, but it is what it is. And Baloo comes in and tries to fight off Shere Khan, and Shere Khan ends up injuring Baloo really badly, and everyone thinks he's dead. Bagheera makes his heartwarming speech about Baloo, and then Baloo wakes up and is alive. In this one, Mowgli runs back to confront Shere Khan, and all the animals have run to the water because they see that there's fire in the jungle and that there's man in the jungle, and they get scared and run. And Shere Khan points out that they're not scared of him right now, the animals. They're more scared of Mowgli because Mowgli has accidentally set the jungle on fire. Even Ray, the wolf cub, who was really close to Mowgli, looks scared of Mowgli in this moment. Mowgli, through coaxing of Shere Khan, because Shere Khan's trying to lure him in, and Shere Khan challenges him and says, show them who you are, show them you're like your father, show them you're a real human, and burn me. To which Mowgli throws away the torch just to prove that he is not like other humans. And Shere Khan points out the flaw in this, because now Mowgli does not have anything to defend him. That is until the other animals start to step up and are reciting the law of the jungle while gathering to protect Mowgli. And then a battle ensues. And Baloo is the first one to take on Shere Khan. Shere Khan, they fight a little bit. Shere Khan fights him off, and then the wolves attack. Mowgli attempts to attack with the wolves, but Bagheera stops him and says, no, you can't fight him like a wolf. Fight him like a man. And this is the first moment in the movie that the characters have actually encouraged Mowgli to use his human tactics and not try to act like a wolf, because Bagheera knows that Mowgli stands no chance against Shere Khan fighting like a wolf. He needs to fight him like a man. And this is a great moment in the movie, because in the whole movie, Mowgli's been being told not to use his tricks anymore, but now he's being told, use your tricks. So Shere Khan eventually fights off the other animals and runs after Mowgli into the forest and chases after him. And they end up on a tree branch. And again, Shere Khan starts to mock Mowgli and tell him, did you really think you'd survive longer than your father did against me, or longer than Akela did? And Mowgli says he's not scared of him anymore. He's done running from him. Shere Khan lunges at him, and Mowgli jumps out the way, and Shere Khan lands on a dead branch and falls into the fire and dies. Well, he falls into the fire. We don't actually see him dead, but I think it's implied that he died. I'm just going to assume that he died. And in the animated one, it's that Mowgli lit a tree limb and tied it to Shere Khan's tail, and Shere Khan runs off. And then Mowgli comes back to the other animals in the live action one on an elephant, and the animals rejoice and everyone's happy. This brings me to one of the last differences in the movie, which is the ending. The ending is different. In the animated movie, the movie ends with Mowgli going into the village after being, let's say, lured by a girl singing a song. And he follows her into the Van village despite Baloo's protest. And that's how it ends. In the live action, Mowgli stays in the jungle. And Raksha, his wolf mother, is now the leader of the pack. Now that Akela, she's now the, which was a nice setup for her to be the wolf pack leader. But back to the ending. Mowgli stays in the jungle. And I loved this ending. The reason why is because I love how there can be a different interpretation of how the movie ends. Because there really is a fork in the road. Does Mowgli leave the jungle, or does he stay? In the animated one, he chose to leave. In the live action, he chose to stay. And I was perfectly fine with this ending. Because again, I love how it can be a different interpretation of events. And I don't know if this is being done because they're anticipating a sequel, but it's been like almost 6 years since the first live action. So I don't know if there's going to be a sequel. Although we did wait for quite a few years for The Incredibles 2 to come out. So I don't know, but I like the ending. Now, my general opinion. Which movie is better? I think they both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses. If we're talking from a storyline and plot perspective, I actually preferred the live action storyline and plot. I thought it had better pacing. I thought everything that they added into the story benefited the movie and didn't take away anything. And I feel like it wasn't trying to copy the animated version. It wasn't trying to be a carbon copy like some of the other remakes tried to do. In this one, they stuck more to how, again, I'm going to mess up his name, so forgive me, but Rudyard Kipling's book. They tried to stay more loyal to the book and actually did something different with it. Also, the animated Jungle Book, although very popular movie and is a classic Disney movie, but if you compare it to the animated Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, it's not as iconic as those movies. So they can actually get away with doing a remake and doing it closer to the book. They actually did something different with it. So from a storyline and plot perspective, I prefer the live actions. Now, when it comes to the music in the movies, I definitely prefer the animated versions of the music. And I feel like there's a reason why. I feel like the animated version probably more focused on the music because it was more of a musical. And then the live action was kind of less of a musical and they focused more on the story, which is why the story was probably better in the live action. And the music was much better done in the animated version. As far as the characters go, with the exception of Baloo and King Louie, I actually liked the character changes they made to Mowgli, Bagheera, and Kaa in the live action. Again, was not a huge fan of Baloo and King Louie's changes in the live action, although Baloo did go through some character development, so I did like that part of it. But as a whole, I liked the live action version. I thought it was pretty good. So, is the live action Jungle Book a Disney do or a Disney don't? I would say it's a Disney do. I would. I enjoy it. This is probably, and again, this is coming from someone who is definitely biased toward the animated versions of these movies. So for me to say that I kind of preferred the live action storyline and plot, that's saying something. So I would say the live action Disney Jungle Book is a Disney do. It's probably one of the only remakes, in my opinion, that lives up to the animated. But we'll see how I feel about the other ones because I am going to do some of the other animated and live action remakes and compare them. Music wise, again, the animated Jungle Book wins. So, in general, I enjoy both movies. I think both movies are great. I prefer the live action storyline. I prefer the animated music. But comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. Which movie did you prefer? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? It's okay. Just all I ask is be respectful to each other in the comment section. That's all I ask. No derogatory comments for each other. I will delete hateful comments. But keep it positive. Let me know. Like this video, subscribe, and give me suggestions on what movie you think I should compare next as far as Disney animation to live action. If no suggestions come by next week, then I will be doing the animated Aladdin and comparing it to the live action Aladdin. So Aladdin is the next one that I'm planning to do. So it's been fun doing this review. I hope you guys have had fun watching me, and I will see you all next time.